Hey there, Board Game Maniacs. Thanks for joining me for another episode of Night of the Living Dead by Cool Mini or Not, Guillotine Games, and MH10. It's a Zombicide game. What you see before you is all of the survivors you get in both the core box as well as the Dead of Night expansion. And we're going to go over all of these characters in detail one at a time to talk about the skills that they have in both Zombicide mode and Romero mode. So let's get a little tighter and talk about each of the characters. First off, we have Deputy Vince. So you can see the color mode here is when he is in Zombicide mode, and the black and white is when he's in Romero mode. Now you can see there are different poses, so you don't have to necessarily paint them. But again, I love doing the painting for the miniatures. I love zombies and zombie games, so I had to paint them. That was guaranteed. But in either case, let's go over the cards for Deputy Vince and see what he has in both Survivor mode as well as the Romero mode. So first, talking about the Survivor mode or Zombicide mode, we're going to concentrate on the color one, which is right here. And in blue, you get a +1 range action. Black can be really cool. In yellow, he's got a +1 action. So it could be range, could be melee, could be moving, could be search. Don't really make a difference. And when he hits orange, he has an option of hit or run or sniper. So we're going to go over what each of these mean. And these are on page 46 of the rule book. So let's talk about hit and run first. So with hit and run, just like, you may have watched or played other Zombicide games and you already know what these mean, but I want to go through them in case there's any variance between the other Zombicide games and this one for Night of the Living Dead. So let's go on. Hit and run. The survivor can use this skill for free. Interesting. Just after they resolve a melee or range action, resulting in at least one ghoul being eliminated. So you have to at least eliminate one ghoul. They can then resolve a free move action. The survivor does not spend extra actions to perform this free move action if ghouls are standing in their zone. That is what hit and run is. Very, very cool. And another orange option you can pick is sniper. So let's talk about sniper, shall we? So again, on page 46, the survivor may freely choose the targets of all their ranged actions. Friendly fire is ignored. That can definitely come in handy so that if you have a group of ghouls, whether they're walkers, fatties, relatives, or breakers, and a survivor, or even if there's no survivor in the same zone, because you have sniper, you can pick and choose who you want to kill as opposed to the hierarchy, which is pretty interesting for the hierarchy, because if I do recall, in the hierarchy for the ghouls, fatties are number 1, and walker, breakers, and relatives are second in priority. There's no abominations or runners in this game. So when you're shooting into a square, you have to first knock out all the fatties, then the walkers, then the breakers, then the relatives, and any miss that you fired in that zone, if there is survivors in that zone, the hit's going to go to them. And that's only if you miss. So be aware that that is specific for this game, Night of the Living Dead. It could be in other Zombicide missions, but in this one, Zombicide games I should say, but in this Night of the Living Dead Zombicide edition, this is how that hierarchy work for shooting in priority sequence. All right, so that was sniper we talked about. Now, if you get into red, you got 3 options in Zombicide. We've got a +1 die to combat, +1 free combat action, and also Hawkeye. So let's look at the first, which is +1 die combat. So when it says combat, it could be melee, it could be range, it don't really matter if I'm looking at this right. So +1 die, and then bracket has action, which is combat. Each of the survivor weapons roll an extra die with actions of the specific type, combat, melee, or range. Dual weapons each gain a die for a total of +2 dice per dual action of the specific type. That is great. So +1 die, and in brackets action. In this case, it would be colon combat, and this is just talking about Deputy Vince that you see in front of you. They also have +1 free combat action. So again, +1 free combat action. So you can see there too as well, it pretty much explains itself just like I read the +1 die combat. Well, this is +1 free combat action that you can do. And then he also has, which is Hawkeye. Hawkeye. So with Hawkeye, the survivor's line of sight goes at range 1 through closed barricades and cornfields. It may allow them to perform range actions through such obstacles. So usually when you're shooting in this game specifically, and you have closed barricades or cornfields, and you're at range 1, you can perform a range action through such obstacles so they're not going to block line of sight. So that is for the Zombicide mode for Deputy Vince, the colored version, which you see right here that is lit up on the screen. So if you're in Romero mode, which is the black and white version, which is right here, what you have, in blue you have no extra things as opposed to when you're in Zombicide mode. And in yellow you get +1 range action, and that kind of speaks for itself. It is +1 free range action. So if you have a ranged weapon, you get a +1 free range action that you can do. And in orange, instead of picking between hit and run and sniper, you only have +1 action in orange and Romero mode for Deputy Vince. And for the red, instead of in Zombicide mode or Survivor mode, where you have the +1 die combat, +1 free combat action, or Hawkeye, you actually have only one, which is called hit and run. I already explained what hit and run was because Deputy Vince in Zombicide mode gets it in the orange. But in Romero mode, he only gets it in the red for hit and run. Next, let's talk about the other survivor. We have Helen, which is the other survivor, and again, the colored version is Zombicide mode, you can see there, and the black and white version is Romero mode. So when she is in the colored version, which is the Zombicide mode or Survivor mode, in blue she gets +1 free search action. So she can search twice during her turn for a +1 free search action. Next, if she gets yellow, she gets a +1 action, which everybody should be aware that it's just one more action. In orange, she has an option to either pick +1 free melee action or ambidextrous. So +1 free melee action is pretty self-explanatory. You just get a +1 free melee action. So ambidextrous, though, ambidextrous. I have to say that slowly to pronounce it properly. The survivor treats all weapons as if they had the dual symbol. So with the dual symbol, looks like an X onto the weapons card. So just say she had 2 katanas. Then she gets to roll dice for equal to 2 katanas for 1 action. And that's really cool to have for ambidextrous. Now if she gets in the red, she has one of 3 options to choose from. +1 die, combat, pretty self-explanatory. You get an extra die for when you're combat. +1 free combat action. So if you're doing a combat action, you get a +1 free combat action. Not die, but an action. And also she has +1 to die roll melee. So +1 to die roll. So which means that if she rolled a 3 and she needed a 4 on her melee roll, and she's in red and she chose +1 to die roll, so then she adds a +1, so that 3 would go to a 4. And that is pretty self-explanatory. But if she is in black and white version, which is Romero mode, you can see right here, blue, she gets nothing. Yellow, it's a +1 free search action. So she still gets a search, one more time for the yellow instead of getting a +1 action. In the orange, she gets a +1 action. And in the red, she only gets a +1 free melee action. So if she's in melee and she's in red, she gets to perform another free melee action. And that's pretty much it between the Zombicide mode and Romero mode for Helen. Harry is next. So with Harry, again, the colored version is Zombicide mode or Survivor mode, Hero mode. And this here is Romero mode, black and white. So with Harry, when he is in Zombicide mode, in blue he gets Taunt. And what Taunt simply does, again, this is probably seen into the other Zombicide games. I'm struggling for words here. So with Taunt, I'm reading this on page 46. The survivor can use this skill for free once during each of their turns. Select a zone up to 2 zones away from the survivor and having a clear path to the survivor. No walls, closed barricades, or closed doors. No line of sight is needed. All ghouls standing in the select zone, so the square, immediately gains an extra activation. They try to reach the taunting survivor by any means available. Taunted ghouls ignore all other survivors. They do not attack them and leave the zone they are standing in if needed to reach the taunting survivor. That can be very good because just say you see one of your other fellow survivors that are surrounded by walker ghouls, and Harry is able to do the taunt to get them out of that zone, so they're going to have one free action to move into another zone towards Harry to attack him instead of the survivor that is originally being attacked. So that could be really, really, really cool. So in yellow, he gets a +1 action. In orange, he has an option of +1 die to melee or slippery. I love playing Josh in season 1 of Zombicide because of slippery. Slippery states, and again, this is on page 46, the survivor does not spend extra actions when they perform a move action out of a zone containing ghouls. So it's still the same as the other Zombicide games. Entering a zone containing ghouls still ends the survivor's move action. So where Harry would have slippery and he was surrounded by like 5 fatties, hypothetically, he could still spend 1 action instead of 2 actions per ghoul to get out of that zone because he has slippery, just 1 action to move away, which is really powerful. I love that ability of slippery. And in the red, Harry is able to choose +1 free combat action, +1 to die roll melee, or Bloodlust melee. Now, Bloodlust melee is very interesting, and it's a lot of fun to be using when, you know, you're going to be fighting a lot of walkers and everything else. So Bloodlust melee. So the survivor can use this skill once during each of their turns. So the survivor spends 1 action. They move up to 2 zones to a zone containing at least 1 ghoul. It don't matter what type of ghoul it is, as long as it's 1 ghoul. They then gain 1 free melee action. Normal movement rules apply. And again, Bloodlust melee is in a lot of the other Zombicide games, and it can be used very, very effectively. Also with Harry, the Bloodlust melee was the last one that you could choose from if you're into Zombicide mode. But compared to when you were in Romero mode, which is the black and white one right there, when you're in blue, threat level, nothing happens. When you're in yellow, you can use taunt. When you're in orange, you can use +1 action. And when you're in red, you get your slippery. So there's a major difference between all of the heroes in Zombicide mode and Romero mode. Let's go on to the next survivor. We have Karen in front of you. And again, both in Zombicide mode, which is colored, and black and white, which is Romero. So with Karen in Zombicide mode, which is the colored version, in blue she has Slippery. I already explained what Slippery was. That's awesome. I'm liking Karen, and you see a lot of people posting videos about Karens. And anyhow, in yellow she gets a +1 action. In orange she has a choice of +1 free move action or Bloodlust Melee, which we already talked about. If she is in red though, she gets +1 die to combat, or +1 free combat action, or shove. Now with shove, this shove is pretty, it should be the same as with the other Zombicide games, because this here is another ability that other survivors had in other Zombicide games. Shove. The survivor can use this skill for free once during each of their turns. Select a zone at range 1 from your survivor. Both zones need to share a clear path. All ghouls standing in your survivor zone are pushed to the selected zone. This is not a movement. So all ghouls, you could have 20 ghouls in one zone that is just about to have lunch on one of the survivors when they activate. And with Karen, she could use her shove if she's in red and push all them ghouls back one zone, which is good. And again, I just want to say that there's no runners in this Night of the Living Dead Zombicide edition, which is great because runners cause a lot of problems for me personally when in the other Zombicide games. So let's talk about Karen in Romero mode, the black and white version. So blue, she has nothing. When she's in yellow though, she has Slippery, which is cool, as opposed to +1 action when she is in yellow in Zombicide mode. Now when she's in orange, she can only do +1 action. When she's in red, she has Bloodlust Melee, which I've already explained. So that's interesting for Karen. Like she, again, all the miniatures, all the survivors are limited when they go in Romero mode. And that can be triggered by relatives coming on the board. And I'm sure they can be triggered during other parts of the game, which when I familiarize with my rule set a little bit more, I'll show it in other videos. Let's go on to the next miniature, shall we? We see Chief McClellan, not Chef McClellan, which I thought at first sounded like a chef. I can't remember a chef in the movie, but it is Chief McClellan. We can see him here in Zombicide mode and here in Romero mode. Now with Chief McClellan, he is included into the expansion Den of Night, as well as previously Deputy Vince too as well. They are included, and Karen too as well actually. So Karen, Chief McClellan, and Deputy Vince is included in the expansion of Dead of Night. Now, let's talk about Chief McClellan in Zombicide mode, which is a color version. So in blue, he has a +1 free range action. In yellow, he's got a +1 action. In orange, he has Hawkeye. We already talked about Hawkeye. You don't have to keep reading it over and over again. And he also has Sniper. So two options, either Hawkeye or Sniper. And they're very close to being the same thing, kind of. But Sniper, you can pick and choose who you want. But with Hawkeye, you can shoot through barricades and cornfields. In red, he's got one of three options. It's +1 die to combat, +1 free combat action, or +1 to die roll range. +1 to die roll. So again, that can be really good if you choose that, so that you can add one to your die roll if you're doing a range attack. Now, if we go into Romero mode, black and white, I'm having fun with this laser pointer. Blue, he gets nothing. Yellow, +1 range action. Orange, +1 action. And in red, he gets the Sniper ability, and that is it. I don't know. I may try him, but I'm thinking so far that I may use Karen for the first game that we play. But I could be wrong. Who knows? We're going to continue on anyhow. Judy, Judy, Judy. You got to listen. I really like Judy into the original movie, and even into the remake that Tom Savini has directed to as well. But anyhow, we're going to go on with Judy. Judy in Zombicide color, and also Romero mode black and white, just like all the other ones. So with Judy, in blue, she gets Sniper. We talked about Sniper before. That's a really good ability to have right in blue. So I would want to give her a range weapon, a good one, because she has Sniper. Yellow, +1 action. Orange, she has a choice of either +1 die to combat or +1 free range action. Now, with me, if I chose Sniper for her, where I have Sniper for her first action, or her first ability in blue, I'd probably pick the +1 free range action in orange. That's just me though. Anyhow, in red, she has +1 die combat, or +1 free combat action, or +1 to die roll ranged. Interesting. But in Romero mode, blue, she gets nothing. Yellow, she gets Sniper. In orange, she gets +1 action, and in red, she gets only +1 free range action. It's still not too bad though. Judy seems to be pretty good, especially where she has the blue right at the start for the blue ability she has in Zombicide mode, which is the color version. She has Sniper. Oh, she's like Karen. I don't know who to choose. We can't talk about Judy without talking about Tom. It's like talking about Tom without talking about Judy. They go hand in hand, boyfriend, girlfriend. You cannot talk without including both of them. So with Tom, when he's in Survivor mode, which is color, he's holding a torch. And that torch is from a table leg. It's really cool. And a knife. But in Romero mode, he only has a butcher knife, as opposed to the torch with the table leg and the butcher knife too as well. But anyhow, in the colored version of Zombicide mode, he has Shove for his blue ability, and we talked about Shove previously. In yellow, +1 action. In orange, a choice of either +1 free melee action and +1 free range action. In red, however, he got 3 choices: +1 to die roll melee, or Bloodlust melee, or hit and run, which we already talked about. Now, in Romero mode, the black and white version of Tom, which is right there, blue, nothing. So this is a trend in Romero mode, and when you're in blue, you have nothing for any of the survivors, I'm assuming, until we talk about the other ones. But anyhow, we also have Shove in yellow for Tom in Romero mode, +1 action in orange, and +1 free melee action in red for Romero mode. So we're seeing a trend here. I really like the sculptures for these. When I was doing the bases, I wasn't sure what I could do for the survivors, but I wanted to mimic, because they primarily are in the house starting off. But in other scenarios, they're probably outside. But anyhow, I wanted to do the floorboards, which I did with my wood burner, you can see there. Really cool. If you're not sure about this, there's a Painting with the Maniac episode where I paint Ben from start to finish into the Zombicide mode, and I go over how I did the floorboards for the base and how I paint them too as well. So check that out on the channel if you haven't already. We have Johnny. Here's Johnny, but that's a different type of movie. Anyway, Johnny comes in the Dead of Night expansion. You do not get him in the core box, which is kind of strange because he was a main character at the first, but spoiler alert, if you haven't watched the movie already, Johnny gets killed at the cemetery by a ghoul. Anyhow, so with Johnny, you have both the colored version, which is the Zombicide mode, and the black and white version, which is in Romero mode. So when you are talking about the Zombicide mode for Johnny, he has Taunt in blue, which we already went over, +1 action in yellow. In orange, he has a choice of either +1 free melee action or hit and run, which we already went over. And in red, he got a +1 free combat action, or a +1 die roll to melee, or slippery in red for Johnny. So, and we already talked about slippery and how that works. In Romero mode, which is the black and white version for Johnny, blue, he's got nothing. Yellow, he gets Taunt, we talked about that. Orange, he gets +1 action, and red, he only gets a +1 free melee action, and that is it. Really cool. I really like the look of this sculpt for both the Romero mode as well as the Zombicide mode, because he's holding a crucifix and a hammer. He's going to crack somebody over the head, because if you remember in the original movie, I think He used the hammer to try to stop one of the Walker ghouls. I just watched it while I was painting, but my mind is not working properly today like usual, and I can't remember if that's what he did. But in either case, very cool sculpt for this guy, I have to say. Johnny, really cool. We have to talk about Barbara now. They're coming to get you, Barbara. Very famous line from the original movie. And Johnny says it to Barbara when they're at the cemetery. It's a great movie. If you haven't seen it, I suggest watching the original because it's well worth the watch. Because George Romero kickstarted the zombie craze back then and the way zombies were. So really awesome, George Romero. Thank you for this. I had the pleasure of working with him on Survival of the Dead. I think it's called Survival of the Dead, where they go to the island. And I think it's called Survival of the Dead. It's not Land of the Dead. I think it's Survival of the Dead. Anyhow, I had the pleasure of working with him, and it was a great pleasure. But anyhow, continue on. So with Barbara in color mode for Zombicide, in blue she gets slippery. So she's like another Josh, I think. In yellow she gets a +1 action. In orange she has a choice of either +1 free combat action or a +1 free move action. Very tempting, both of them. And in red, she gets one of 3 options. She gets +1 die to combat, or +1 free move action, or Barbarian. Now, Barbarian for Barbara? Barbara the Barbarian? Interesting. In the book, page 46, Barbarian. When resolving a melee action, the survivor may substitute the die number of the melee weapon or weapons they use with the number of ghouls standing in their zone. Skills affecting the dice roll, like +1 die melee, still apply. Barbarian is a beast to use when you are fighting. I definitely would jump at Barbarian for Barbara. No questions asked in Zombicide mode. Now, in Romero mode, which is the black and white version, blue she gets nothing, yellow slippery, so it's still pretty good. Orange she gets +1 action, and in red she only gets +1 free move action for Barbara. Still, Barbara's looking pretty good. Now I'm kind of wondering if I should take Barbara or Karen. Judy was pretty good too as well because she had Sniper in blue. So it's either Barbara, Judy, or Karen. Comment below if you played the game, or if you didn't, and let me know who you would take in the game for one of your characters, one of your main characters. We're going to go on to the final survivor. Last but not least is our buddy Ben. So Ben in color for Zombicide, he gets Hawkeye, which we talked about already, Hawkeye. And that is a really good thing to have in blue, because you know, he had the 30-30 Winchester a lot. You can see his miniature is sculpted with the 30-30 Winchester. In yellow, he gets a +1 action. In orange, you got a choice of either a +1 die range or +1 free range action. In red, in Zombicide mode, he gets a +1 die ranged, or +1 to die roll ranged, or ambidextrous. And we already talked about ambidextrous in previously, whoever, I can't remember who it is at ambidextrous, but anyhow, we had that too as well, so be aware, because I did talk about ambidextrous. I'm just seeing who it is that has ambidextrous. Oh, it's Helen. Helen has ambidextrous in orange, so Ben gets it in red. So in Romero mode, which is black and white mode, blue nothing, yellow he has Hawkeye, in orange he has a +1 action, and in red he only got a +1 free range action. And that is it for all the survivors in this game. There you have it, Board Game Maniacs. All of the survivors that you get in Night of the Living Dead by Cool Mini or Not, Guillotine Games, and MH10. It is a Zombicide game, and that's with the expansion too, as all you see in front of you. Looking forward to playing this game. I love zombies, as everybody knows. I love the Zombicide games. I have almost every single one that is out there. I'm just patiently waiting to get my hands onto the second edition of Zombicide, which was a Kickstarter that was released. Because this is a Kickstarter that I got when it came out for, and it came with the one expansion. If you're not sure what comes into the box set for this, for both the expansion as well as the core game, all you gotta do is look on our YouTube channel, the Board Game Maniacs, which you're watching this on, because we did do an unboxing to let you know everything that is inside this box. So check that out too as well. And don't forget to check out the painting where I painted Ben in Zombicide mode, and you can see what I did for painting him, and also the base with the floorboards, because that's a lot of people have been interested and really like the floorboard idea. So don't forget to check that out. And don't forget to click the subscribe and bell notification if you haven't already. And if you want, you can jump over to a Patreon account, Board Game Maniacs, and you can become an official sponsor for Board Game Maniacs if you like to. Just watching, subscribing, commenting, liking, and sharing is very valuable to us too as well. So I thank everybody who is doing that, and I thank our Patreon supporters that are supporting us on our channel, for our channel too as well, because it helps us continue doing this and getting other games. And as mentioned before, with 2021 upon us, that we are going through a little bit of a change at Board Game Maniacs. It is not a major change, it's just making it a little bit more organized for everybody who have subscribed, and as well as just the people who jump into the channel to view certain things that is on our channel. Check that video out, look for it on our channel. It's going to be channel update for 2021 or December channel update for 2020, something like that. But just look for it on the channel if it's not already released, and it'll explain a lot about what is going on here at Board Game Maniacs. So until then, don't forget to check out the gameplay videos for this marvelous game, because I'm excited for this. And don't forget to hit the subscribe, bell notification, and everything else. If you need to get a hold of us, links in the description below about how you can contact us via email. So until next time, have some fun, kill some zombies, kill some ghouls, play some games, watch some zombie movies. But most importantly of all, that is, be a maniac. We'll see you next time on the flip side. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Boo. See you in 2021. Boo. Hope you enjoyed that video. If you want to keep up to date with Board Game Maniacs, click on the like and subscribe button to be notified when more videos come available. If you want to become an official sponsor of Board Game Maniacs, go to patreon.com/BoardGameManiacs. Or you can go to streamlabs.com/BoardGameManiacs1. That's right, and you can donate to help keep the lights on, keep food in our bellies, and play more games. We'll purchase more games, more equipment to make Board Game Maniacs evolve and get bigger and larger. Because of you, the viewers, I thank you from the bottom of my toes to the top of my head for all of your support. And until next time, Board Game Maniacs, be a maniac.